Hello, my name is Markie Moore. I am a BSW senior at Seton Hall University, and this is my poster entitled Sacrifice Zones and Superfund Sites, the Disproportionate Burden of Pollution. As the largest economy in the world, the United States boasts industrial innovation and production levels rivaled by few others. Lesser known is that the U.S. also produces the second largest amount of global hazardous waste. The U.S. boasts a list of over 1,300 threatening toxic waste facilities termed Superfund sites. This list only includes the sites deemed as highly concerning. While all toxic waste facilities elicit significant environmental concerns, Superfund sites pose particularly concerning threats to the nation's population. Proximity to a Superfund site has been tied to increased rates of serious health conditions such as cancer, heart disease, respiratory disease, developmental disabilities, and birth defects. Additionally, exposure to hazardous substances has been linked with behavioral difficulties, increased educational difficulties, and decreased cognitive functioning. Superfund sites pose a consequential threat to the well-being and quality of life of people. However, the impact of these toxic wastes is not equally experienced by all people. In fact, the effects of toxic wastes are extremely disproportionate upon various populations in the U.S. Minority and low-income neighborhoods and communities are far more likely to be exposed to the harmful impacts of Superfund sites. This disparity is not a mere coincidence. Historically, communities of color and low-income communities have been deliberately targeted for toxic waste facilities. Environmental policymaking and the enforcement of regulations and laws have failed to protect communities from the unfair and disproportionate exposure to harm. Toxic waste sites are an issue not only of environmental justice, but also racial justice, and they must be recognized in order for the injustice to be addressed. The disparity exists as a result of policy failing to provide adequate protection for underrepresented communities. In some cases, policies have even further marginalized and exploited these communities. Discriminatory housing policies, redlining, and unfair zoning laws force communities of color into undesirable locations and furthermore repress their voices. Industries capitalize on communities lacking political sway as they provide a path of least resistance for their universally undesirable facilities. Research has found that industries often build in neighborhoods where there is a trend of whites already moving out and poor minority residents moving in. While the issue still requires attention, there have been several efforts to address this disparity. In 1997, the National Environmental Policy Act was created to establish guiding principles and strategies that cater to the growing need for social environmental justice. Executive Order 12898 was also enacted as an effort to draw attention to disproportionately high and adverse effects of federal activities on minority populations and low-income populations. Much work is needed before the racial disparity related to environmental justice is adequately resolved. Most noteworthy, the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, CERCLA, was composed to allocate funds and guidance for the Environmental Protection Agency to clean up the most contaminated sites in the U.S. CERCLA successfully attended to growing toxic emergencies, but did little to stop future Superfund sites from being constructed. CERCLA was enacted over 30 years ago, and a similar emergency response has not been enacted since. Regardless of CERCLA's effectiveness in attending to current exposure, an emergency response program alone will not be enough to counteract the damage which accumulated to our current situation. To adequately address the social impact of this racially rooted environmental justice issue, policies must be created both to protect and prevent communities from the devastating effects of Superfund sites. Communities being looked at for the construction of a Superfund site should be given a platform and a highlighted voice to speak on these issues without struggle and discuss the harms and benefits. Policymakers must create policies which protect communities of color that are more likely to be exploited to protect vulnerable citizens in the future. Standardized assessments can be created to assist in ruling out vulnerable populations from targeting, and penalties can be formulated to deter companies from seeking to build in marginalized communities. Thank you.